And so, chapter 1, the economic problem. And so the first slide says, what is the economic problem? And it says, because we live in a world of scarce resources, but people have unlimited wants and needs, how do we meet people's wants and needs in this world of scarcity? Now, it's going to take me a little time just to discuss what this means. But no matter how far you go in economics, you can go and get a PhD in economics, but you're still faced with the same economic problem. In other words, what economics is all about is how do we meet people's needs in a world of scarcity. Now, in a nutshell, that is the economic problem. Okay? So, I'm going to talk about this. What is a good? Again, some vocabulary here. A tangible item that is used to satisfy wants. Now, as you recall, a lot of what we do in economics is vocabulary. Economics can be like a foreign language, and it's important for you to understand the certain terms. And sometimes you'll see a word that you've never heard before, but sometimes you'll see a word that you've heard before, and society uses it in a certain way, but in the field of economics, we use it in a different way. So it's important for you to know the vocabulary. So the good is anything tangible that people would spend their money on to satisfy a want or a need. A service is something intangible, like a haircut, or you pay someone to do your taxes. That's what's called a service. So consumers spend their money on goods and services, all right? So what is a free good or service? There is enough of a good or service to go around for everyone who wants it for free. Now, you can go to the drinking fountain down the hall and you can drink as much water as you want and not have to pay for it. So we call that a free good. And why is it free? Well, it's free because there's plenty to go around to everyone who wants it. Okay? Now, what is a scarce good or service? There's not enough of a good or service to go around for everyone who wants it for free. Now, everything that has a price is by definition scarce. Now, scarce does not mean rare or hard to come by. See, this is where definitions come in. In economics, scarce means there's not enough to go around to everyone who wants it for free. Now, if there's not enough to go around for everyone who wants it for free, then how do we decide who gets and who doesn't get? And in a free market, the answer is the price mechanism. Prices decide who gets and who doesn't get. So who gets? Well, those people who, number one, can afford to pay the price, and number two, has the money to pay the price. So those people get, and then everyone else doesn't get. And so the price mechanism solves what is called the allocation problem. See, because we live in a world of scarcity, and I'm still talking about the economic problem, we live in a world of scarce resources. Well, I'm talking now about scarcity. Because we live in a world of scarcity, we have to have some mechanism as a society to decide who gets and who doesn't get. Now, there are other ways to decide who gets and who doesn't get. Like, there are 40 seats in this classroom. So how do we decide who got the seats in this classroom? It was first come, first serve, right? It wasn't the highest bidder, right? You didn't have to enter into an auction and bid in order to get into this classroom. It was first come, first serve. So that's a method that we use to satisfy a scarcity problem. There's not enough seats for everyone who wants it, so how do we decide who gets? Well, first come, first serve. See, there are several ways that we can decide who gets and who doesn't get, other than the price mechanism. But what I'm saying is that in the free market, the mechanism that we use to decide who gets and who doesn't get is the price mechanism. All right? Prices decide who gets and who doesn't get in a free market. And that's something else you got to keep in mind. What we're really studying here in this course is how free markets work. We compare free markets with markets that are not so free, because there's really no such thing as a totally free market. But basically we're talking about how a free market works, and then perhaps how we've modified that free market to rectify some issues. That's pretty much what we do in this course from beginning to end. So what is a resource? See, again, we live in a world of scarce. Well, now I just talked about what scarce is. We live in a world of scarce resources. So now I'm going to talk about what resources are. A resource is something that is used to produce goods and services. Okay? A resource are those things that we use to produce goods and services. Say, who gets when a good is scarce? Well, okay, consumers who have the money and want it the most. All right. See, I get ahead of myself sometime on these PowerPoint slides. So what is a market? A set of arrangements through which buyers and sellers carry out exchange at mutually agreeable terms. Now, economics is very much like playing a game. Now, take the game of football, for example. Football may be a very rough sport, but are there very definite rules that both teams have to know, and that you've got a referee making sure that the players abide by the rules? Well, that's kind of like what economics is, okay? That there are certain, it's like a game, and in order to play that game, you have to know the rules. And one rule in this game of economics is that unless there's a market transaction, then we're not interested. See, what we do in economics is that we look at market transactions. See, for example, let's say that you go to your neighbor, and your neighbor pays you to cut their grass. Now, that is a market transaction. All right? But if you cut your own grass, then we don't count that as labor, because there's no market transaction. We don't consider that, even though in both cases you've cut a lawn. Okay, if we would double the birth rate of cows, the supply of cows would not increase, because we're not interested in how many cows we have. Now, if more cows are brought to market, then we say that the supply of cows have increased. All right? If General Motors produces a car, and it's a well-made car, nothing wrong with it, but if it sits in the parking lot, then we don't consider it. I mean, it's just like it didn't exist. All right? I mean, economically. I mean, you've got a perfectly good functioning car, but if it just sits in the lot, then what good is it? It's nothing but a hunk of metal. It's not doing anybody any good at all. Right? We've just wasted resources, manufacturing this thing, if it's not used, correct?
It's made some economic impact sitting there.
No, economically, no. That's the point I'm making.
Put money in someone's pocket, they spend something.
Well, yeah, but again, definition. See, definition. You say what the important thing in the beginning of this course is to know the definitions. That car, economically speaking, has no value unless someone agrees to purchase the car. If someone agrees to separate themselves from their money to buy that car, then economically we say that that car has value. And we count it as a market transaction. And therefore we count it as part of the supply of cars. See, the point I'm making is that in economics, unless there's a market transaction, then we don't consider it. Okay? So, again, just rules of the game. I mean, you know, this is nothing to agree with or not agree with. It's just the way it is. It's just how it's definition. It's how we define things. So how do we solve the allocation problem in the free market? Buyers and sellers compete in the market. It's like at an auction. You know, if you're at an auction and there's a lot of people who want something, you know, let's say all of you had $100 in your pocket, and I were to auction off some of these things up here, you know, this computer and this monitor and, you know, things like that. Then what you would do is you would bid against one another, right? And the highest bidder would be able to buy whatever I'm auctioning off. Now you're limited by the fact that you've only got $100 in your pocket. So what I can get for these things up here, it can't be more than $100 because none of you have more than $100 to give me for any of this stuff. But if all of you had $1,000 in your pocket, and then we had the same bidding process, what would happen? Well, I could probably get more for this computer if you all were bidding against one another with $1,000 instead of $100, correct? Now, you all might have more money, and it's still the bidding process, but how many computers are there? How many of you are going to win the bid for the computer? It doesn't make any difference how much money you've got. There's still only one computer up here. You see what I mean? And that's the way markets work. See, what assumption do we make concerning the market? Economists only consider market transactions. Okay, I just talked about that. Who gets when a good is scarce? Consumers who have the money and want it the most. I've already talked about that. Who was Adam Smith? He wrote The Wealth of Nations. Actually, the full title was An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations, published in 1776, and Adam Smith is known as the father of modern-day economics. And so many of the explanations that we use in this course can be taken directly from The Wealth of Nations, published in 1776. So many of these. See, this course is called The Principles of Economics. And so many of these principles were explained and in a way that how free markets operate way back in the 1700s. So there's actually very little, except for the new terminology and they didn't have iPads and iPhones back then. I mean, there are certain things we talk about here that didn't exist then, but the principles really are the same. You know, marginal analysis and so many of the things that we talk about are, were explained way back, in the 1700s. And Adam Smith wasn't even the first to explain a lot of these things. There were people who they were called political philosophers, but they weren't called economists back then, but they were people who, political economy was called. But, one person had this idea to explain a little bit about how the free market works, and another person would write a book and they would explain maybe a different facet of, how markets work, and a third person, would shed some light on this facet of how economics works. But Adam Smith was able to put all these ideas together, and he was the first one to explain overall, how the market works. You see, here's the problem, or here's the deal. How is it that in a free market with no central authority dictating what to produce and who gets what and how much, how is it that the system happens to produce those goods and services that we want and need and at reasonable prices? I mean, how does that work? If you don't have any central authority, no central authority making any decisions, how is it that this monolithic system here, how is it that we just happen to get those things that we want and need at reasonable prices? And that's what really, I mean, Adam Smith talked about. Okay, he talked about the invisible hand, which I'm going to explain. Yeah, Dimitri?
Isn't it that like you take a dive first and with the research and development of everything, and then once you make the investment and then it goes down, like you take the dive, then once you start like profiting off of everything, then you can sell it off at a reasonable price?
Well, you're getting into particulars, and we will talk about the particulars as we go along, but right now I'm just trying to look at the bigger picture. So if you just kind of hold off on that, because we will talk about the very shortly here. Let me just finish my train of thought. But I think what you're getting at is the price mechanism, and I'm going to talk about that here in just a little bit. But overall, what Adam Smith talked about is the invisible hand. See, the question is, in a free market where you have no central authority, how does the system give us what we want at reasonable prices? And his answer was the invisible hand. So your question to me then ought to be, what in the world is the invisible hand? And the invisible hand is self-interest. Self-interest. You see, first of all, if I were to open up a clothing store in downtown Radford, I mean, what would be my motivation, first of all? I mean, do I do it just because I just want something to do? I mean, why do people go into business?
Money.
Yeah, they want to make money. I mean, why do you want a job? To make money, right? I mean, there's a self-interest here, correct? And so let's say that I go down to North Carolina to buy clothes, and I pick out, oh man, these are great shirts, and I really like these, and I buy so many of these, and I really like these pants, and I buy so many of those, and so I buy all these clothes, down at the clothing mills in North Carolina, and bring them back and then put them in my shop. What are my chances of success?
You have no passion. You're essentially like reselling something.
Well, no, I mean, that's all that Sam Walton did with Walmart. I mean, Walmart doesn't produce anything, but they just sell what other people produce. So, and he became, one of the largest companies in the world. So, but what mistake have I made? Now, me, all right, you're looking at me, I start a clothing store in downtown Radford. And I go to North Carolina and I buy a bunch of clothes that I like to bring them back to my shop.
So you.
Downtown Radford is.
But why me?
Yeah, so you didn't think about the people who's living in Radford, what they want.
And now, who are these people that are going to come into my store?
College students.
And who am I?
You're an old man.
I'm an old man, well, at least he's honest. And that's the mistake, exactly. See, if I go to North Carolina and buy what I want, then my chances of success are nil. You see, in order for me to succeed, I have to get my mind off myself and onto other people. And I have to say, now, what kind of person is going to come into my store? And I have to know what they want. See, I might go down to North Carolina. I might say, oh my God, can you believe anybody would wear a shirt like this? But if I know that this is what, the young college student might like, then that's what I do. See, so even though, what Adam Smith talked about is even though the invisible hand is the self-interest, but self-interest is not, what I'm saying here, is not necessarily a selfish thing. In fact, it's quite the opposite, you see. I mean, if I were selfish, I wouldn't be thinking of other people, and I may go down to North Carolina and buy the clothes that I like, and I would fail, All right? In order for me to succeed, I have to get my mind off myself and on other people. And the more people I can help get what they want, then I get what I want. But I've got to help other people first. And the more people I help get what they want, then the more I get what I want. And that's what Adam Smith was talking about when he talked about self-interest. See, how is it that in a free market with no central authority, that the system gives us what we want at reasonable prices? Because of self-interest and competition. Okay? Self-interest, but self-interest is not a selfish thing. It's getting your mind off yourself and helping other people get what they want. Okay, so according to Adam Smith, what is the invisible hand? Self-interest will guide the economy to produce what we want and offer us reasonable prices. And that's because of competition. You see, once someone gets into a market, let's say you've got a new invention, and you bring this new invention to market, and this new invention becomes very successful, and you start making a whole bunch of money. Well, the next thing that's going to happen is that some people are going to look at that and they're going to say, well, hey, people really like this, and maybe we could make money at this, and so they learn to do it. And so now you've got more than one person, one company, and then you got two companies. You see, that's called competition. Now, I can ask you another question that's really explains this. Why are most pencils yellow? And that's interesting, isn't it? I mean, they sell red pencils and blue pencils, but what color pencil is the most popular? Yellow. Well, why are most pencils yellow? And the answer is, well, I've got no idea, but I can tell you why most pencils are yellow. You want to hear this? See, here's the way it works. Let's say someone invents a pencil. And so the first pencil was a very crude device. It wasn't painted. It was thick, and it was maybe square, and you sharpened it with no eraser on it, and you sharpened it with a knife, and there's a big thick piece of graphite in the middle, so someone invented the pencil, but it was a very crude writing device. So anyway, let's take this inventor of a pencil. So he goes, how are you going to sell this pencil? Well, he goes around to different retail outlets and he says, hey, I got this new invention, and look, this is where you do it, and you can, sharpen it, and you can write on paper, and do you think people would, buy it? Instead of using a pen, I call it a pencil, and so retail store owner might say, yeah, I think I'll take a risk on that, and so he orders maybe 1,000, and you go to the next retail store, and he says, yeah, I think I could sell some of that, and he makes an order, and so you take your orders back to your shop, and then you fulfill those orders. You make up a bunch of pencils, and so lo and behold, these retail stores start selling all these pencils, and this pencil company starts making some good profit. And so then what happens? Well, others say, well, hey, there's a good market with pencils, so let us get into that market. But are we going to manufacture exactly the same pencil? Well, no. I mean, let's modify this pencil, maybe to make it, a little bit more popular, than the first one. And, let's make it round, let's make it lighter, let's put an eraser on it, let's paint it, different colors, and so that's, more people entered the market, to produce pencils, and the pencil changed in form. All right, now we got different color pencils. And so people come to the store and they say, well, I want to buy a pencil. And the storekeeper says, well, what color do you want? And, they might say blue or black or but most people say yellow. Now, why they say yellow, no one knows. But anyway, a lot of people want yellow pencils. In fact, what happens sometimes is the store runs out of yellow pencils, and someone comes in and says, I want a yellow pencil. Oh, gee, I don't have one. I got blue. Oh, I don't want blue. I noticed that guy next door sells them, so I'll go next door and buy they got yellow pens. I'll go buy a yellow pencil. Well, with a whole lot of people wanting yellow pencils, how do we decide who gets the yellow pencils? Well, the price mechanism. The price goes up. See? And the store owner says, well, I can raise my price in yellow pencils because, hey, I can raise my price and sell just as many, because there's such a high demand for these things. But no one is selling buying my blue pencils, very few people anyway. So I'm going to lower the price of my blue pencils just to get rid of them, you see, because I put money into these blue pencils and I just don't want to keep them around forever. And so what happens? Well, the price of yellow pencils goes up, the price of blue pencils goes down. Now, since it costs the same amount of money to produce a yellow pencil and a blue pencil, what color pencil are the manufacturers going to produce more of? The yellow pencil, because they can make more money with the yellow pencil than the blue pencil. And then what happens? Well, most pencils on the market end up being yellow. And that's how markets work. Y'all with me on this? So anyway, this is all part of the markets work and part of the invisible hand. See, what was the main idea of The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith? Everyone would benefit from less government and free trade. See, the point here is that in a free market system, if you don't need any central authority, it's a system that can operate all by itself. Now, that's not to say that we don't need government, because there's lots of reasons why any society, even one with a very free market, needs government. And in our 6th chapter, we talk about government. That's the name of the chapter, government. And you're going to find that there are lots of reasons, in terms of like national defense and many other reasons, protecting us from pollution and helping people in need. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons. Public goods. I mean, we get into all kinds of reasons why we need, government. But what we're talking about here is a free market doesn't need government to dictate what to produce and how to produce it. And they don't need to dictate who gets what and how much, because the free market is a system that can do this. And this is what Adam Smith was talking about in The Wealth of Nations. He was talking about how free markets work. Is self-interest a greedy concept? No. In a free market, you get what you want by helping other people get what they want. All right. What is the price mechanism? Now, here's where, Dimitri, this is where maybe I can help answer your question. The price mechanism. The price mechanism in a free market, there's three roles. The first is it conveys information. Now, take the yellow pencils and blue pencils. How is it that producers of pencils knew that consumers wanted mostly yellow pencils? Well, what gave them that information is the increase in price of yellow pencils. Now notice, did the manufacturer of pencils raise the price of yellow pencils? No, it was people bidding against one another. It was the retail store owners who knew what demand was for pencils, and it was there that the price of pencils increased. It wasn't your producer that increased the price of pencils. The price of yellow pencils increased in the market. See? So, but what told the producers of pencils what color people wanted? Well, it was the increase in price of the yellow pencils. That said, hey, we want more yellow pencils. The price of blue pencils went down. That said, hey, you producers of pencils, we want fewer blue pencils. See, the price mechanism conveys information from the consumer to the producer in terms of what the consumer wants. Okay? So we have to have a fluid price mechanism. We have to allow prices to increase and decrease according to market forces in order that the signals that producers receive are clear cut. All right? Now, the second role of the price mechanism is it gives incentives. Okay, producers know what color pencils that people want, but what gives them the incentive to give people what people want? And the answer is, again, the higher price. Now, if it costs the same to make a yellow pencil and a blue pencil, and the price of yellow pencils is going up and the price of blue pencils is going down, then the producer is going to make more money. He has an incentive to produce more yellow pencils. So the price mechanism gave the producer the incentive to give the consumer what the consumer wants. And the third role of prices, the price mechanism, is it gives the producer the financial wherewithal, the ability to give consumers what consumers want. If people want more pencils, if this becomes a popular invention, then it's going to cost money to produce more pencils. We've got to build a new factory. We got to buy more machines. We got to hire more labor. Now, where's all this money going to come from? Well, all this money is going to come from the higher price of the pencils. Pencils are popular. We had an allocation problem. Who got? People bid against one another. The highest bidders got. As the price went up, and we didn't say anything about cost, they stayed the same. Producers of pencils could make more money, and with that money, they could buy more machines and hire more people. So the price mechanism gave the producer the financial ability to give the consumer what the consumer wants. And this is what's called the price mechanism. This is how free markets work. Okay? Now, what assumption do economists always make? When prices change, nothing else changes. Now, this is one of those rules of the game. When we change price in economics, we're going to assume that nothing else changes. All right? And that simplifies our discussion and our analysis, you see, of how markets work. Now, you'll get, we're going to revisit this a lot throughout the course, but that's just something, one of those rules of the game. Just like, if there's no market transaction, we don't consider it. That's a rule. If price changes, we're going to assume that nothing else changes. Well, that's one of those rules of the game. Now, what is normative economics? Opinions or value judgments are made. With normative economics, there's a value judgment. Like if I say one ought to do this or the government ought to do that, then that's what is called part of normative economics. There's an opinion being made here, all right? And there's a place for that in economics. But this is contrasted to what is called positive economics. With positive economics, we have a definite cause and effect, okay? Positive economics is more concrete. It's cause and effect. There's no opinion being made here. That's just the way, it explains, how things are concretely. What are two common pitfalls to avoid? Correlation with causation and the fallacy of composition. Well, that's too bad. Let's say that you were in a football game and you were the stadium is full. You're halfway up the bleachers, and there's an exciting gameplay going on. On the field, and so you stand up to get a better look. Now, will you get a better look? Well, that depends on other people. If you're the only one that stands up, then you'll get a better look. But if everyone stands up, then you won't get a better look, correct? So what is true for one may not be true for the whole. And that's something we have to, consider in economics. If one or few people do something, then we have one result. But if everyone does it, then we're going to get a different result. that's part of how life works. Okay? And the fallacy of composition, the example there is, let's say that you were born on a farm, and when you were young, every morning the rooster crowing woke you up. And as soon as you woke up, you looked out the window and you saw the sun go. You saw the sun coming up. So when you were little, you just assumed that the rooster crowing caused the sun to come up. Now, did the rooster crowing cause the sun to come up? No, it didn't. You see, but you observe that, rooster crows, sun comes up. Rooster crows, sun comes up. Rooster crows, sun comes up. But did the rooster crowing cause the sun to come up? Well, maybe yes and maybe no. Of course, we know in this example, no. But in economics, what I'm saying is that we can observe certain things, and it looks like A affects B in a certain way, but we can't take for granted that is fact. Okay, these are things we have to be aware of when we're analyzing how the world works. Okay, so what are the factors of production? Land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. Now again, we're just getting down into definitions here. See, we live in a world of scarce resources. Well, what I'm talking here about is the economic problem. I'm talking about resources. So what is land? How is land defined in economics? Land are plots of ground or other natural resources used to produce goods and services. Land is anything from the earth. It's fresh water, it's arable land, it's timber, it's iron, it's gold, anything from the earth is called a land resource. Now, is everything from the earth called a land resource? No, only those things that are used to produce other goods and services. See? Those things that are from the earth that we extract and use to produce goods and services is what is called a land resource.
Like oil?
Oil, yeah, sure, of course. Anything. If you look around the room here, man had to manufacture all of these things. We had to take raw materials. We had to take what already existed, right? None of what you see here, man did not create anything. To create means to make something from nothing. And everything we see in this room was not created by man, but we took raw materials and we manufactured them into the finished product. And those raw materials that we took was called a land resource. See, what is the only thing that man can create?
Child.
Well, now again, you're making something from something. To make something from nothing. The only thing that we can create to make that out of thin air is money. Money. That's the only thing that we can create out of nothing. Everything else, we had to have the raw materials to manufacture into what we see. But we can create money out of thin air. Okay? The only thing that man can create is money. That's what fiat currencies are. A fiat currency is something that can be created out of thin air, that nothing backs it up, like the US dollar. All right? Anyway, that's a land resource. What is labor? The physical and mental efforts of humans used to produce goods and services. Now, again, the example I gave earlier is that, cutting lawn. If you cut your neighbor's lawn, that's not labor. That is labor. If your neighbor paid you, that's labor. See, human effort was exerted to, in this case, to cut grass, but it was something to produce something that society, or to do something that society placed value on. Society places a value on short grass over long grass. Okay, yeah.
So what would volunteer work be?
Well, volunteer work would not be labor. Now, that's an excellent question. That's a very good question. What would volunteer labor be? Technically speaking, all right, in economics, that would not be considered labor. Okay, in order for something to be considered labor, there has to be a market transaction. Someone has to be paid to do something. See, one of the reasons that we define these things this way is measurement. If we define labor as only that which people are paid to do, then there's a way of measuring that. See, if we included volunteer labor as labor, there would be no way of measuring that. You know, that's actually, in all these years I've been teaching this course, that's the first time I've said that. So that was a great question. Made me think. So the physical and mental efforts of humans used to produce goods and services. Okay, that's labor. Now, what is capital? Buildings and equipment and human skills used to produce goods and services. Now, human skills, that would be human capital, but let me just talk about capital. Capital are buildings and equipment, machines, tools used to produce goods and services. If I were a carpenter, and then a hammer or a truck would be examples of capital. All right? Now, I have a truck. I have a hammer at home. Are these things capital? No, they're not capital. Why? Because I don't use them to produce other goods and services. So I mean, a hammer in the hands of a carpenter is capital. The hammer I've got at home is not capital. The truck that the builder uses is capital. The truck that I use, to get up wood once in a while, or to move furniture, stuff like that, is not capital. It's not capital. Why? Because I'm not paid. I don't use that truck in my effort to solve the economic problem. I don't use that truck in an economic sense where I'm paid something, where I'm trying to satisfy a want or a need. And therefore, my truck is not capital. Yeah.
Is it equity? But what's the difference between capital and equity?
Well, it might be equity. I mean, it has value. I mean, a truck certainly has value.
Mm-hmm.
It has value to me and it has value to my friends. I mean, if you want friends, just buy a truck. You can find all kinds of people that like you all of a sudden.
You put them all in the
But I mean, there's equity there and there's value there. But what we're talking about is definition. Okay. You see, in economics, we have a very narrow definition of things. Yeah.
So, what if you fix something yourself? You're saving yourself money by not calling someone.
No, you're not. No, you've got to. There has to be money exchanging hands. All right. That's how we define these things. Now, this brings us, what's human capital? Human capital are the skills to use capital. You see, what is it that we specialize in here at New River Community College? What we specialize in is human capital. Okay? See, I mean, you come to New River and you learn, this computer is worthless unless you know how to use it, right? Machines are worthless unless you know how to use them. So the training that you get, the knowledge that you have to operate these machines is human capital. Okay, so that's what New River specializes in. Now, what does money allow you to do? Make choices. Some people say, well, I've got all the money, that I, want. I mean, I just make so much and I'm happy with that. Well, that's fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with, with that. But the point I'm making is what really is money. And what really money is the ability to make choices. The more money you have, the more choices you can make.
That's an opinion, though.
That's not opinion, it's a fact.
Not really. You can do all kinds of things without money, and I mean, you can just come up with all kinds of
But if you don't have money, can you buy a mansion? Can you buy a car? Can you eat steak every day instead of hot dogs? Can you take trips around the world? Can you take a cruise on the on the Mediterranean? Now you can't do those things unless you have money. See, the point is that all money is the more money you've got, the more choices you can make. See, I mean, if you don't have the money, you can't afford steak, you eat hot dogs. If you've got money, you can buy hot dogs or you can buy steak. If you don't have the money, you drive an old jalopy. But you've got the money, you can either drive an old jalopy or drive a new car. All right? I mean, that's all money is choices. There's nothing. It's not bad. It's not good. It's
to make choices.
Yeah, exactly. It's the opportunity to make choices. That's a good way of putting it. Exactly. And that's all it is. That's all money is the more money you've got, the more choices you can make. You can give it all away if you want, or you can do this, or you can do that. It's your choice. But if you don't have much money, you simply have fewer choices. All right? See, it's not bad or good. It's just choices. Okay, now, entrepreneurial ability. This is a good place to stop because, let me ask you a question. What is the source of all wealth building? How can you do what you want? How can you afford to do what you want, when you want, and whom you want to do it with? What is the only way to attain personal freedom to do what you want, when you want, and whom you want to do it with? Well, that's what we're going to talk about next time, all right? I'm going to give you the secret of wealth building next time. So I'll see you all next time.
Thank you.